Hello, and welcome to Greenbelt Alliance's annual benefit, Hidden Heroes of the Greenbelt. I'm Franco Finn. You may know me the last 20 years as the hype man for the Golden State Warriors, but I'm here and I'm excited to be your host today. Now, Greenbelt Alliance kicked the event off last year in the virtual space, given COVID, where they honored Adria Arco, Warren Logan, and Michelle Whitman for their extraordinary work in building resilience to climate change in their communities. Now, we're also excited to be back this year and to introduce you to the second edition of Hidden Heroes of the Greenbelt. Through an open nomination process, we were able to hear from our community about the people who are doing important work behind the scenes and who deserve to be celebrated. Now, we're sure that you're going to leave here inspired by each and every one of them. So, we're joining you now from the beautiful Brazilian Room in Berkeley. A fun fact about this place, its name comes from its rich hardwood paneling that was once part of the Brazilian Pavilion at the 1939 Golden Gate International Exhibition on Treasure Island. Now, shout out to East Bay Regional Park District for sharing this amazing space with us. Now, we're here today for two reasons. One, to honor the dedicated government staff who work behind the scenes to champion climate-smart plans, policies, and actions in our communities, aka the Hidden Heroes of the Greenbelt. And two, we are here to raise money to help support the critical work Greenbelt Alliance is doing to educate, advocate, and collaborate to ensure that the Bay Area's lands and communities are resilient to a changing climate. Before we jump in, we want to take a moment to turn the spotlight on you because it's your dedication and support that is making Greenbelt Alliance's vision of a resilient Bay Area a reality. A region of healthy, thriving, resilient communities made up of lands and people that are safe during climate disasters and recover quickly from wildfires, floods, and droughts. Now, a region where everyone is living with nature in new and powerful ways for generations to come. Now, this is a vision I know everyone is watching today, and we want to achieve this together, which is why Greenbelt Alliance needs to raise $270,000 before the day is over. We've already had some incredibly generous donors who are so passionate for this work that they've committed to helping them reach their goal. So join these donors by giving today. Now, throughout the event, you can donate directly or pledge your financial support by checking the links on your screen. And in the live chat, I'm thrilled to hear that we have a great audience today. So give us a shout out. Tell us where you're tuning in from and share some of the love with us here on this community in the chat, all right? You can also share on social media using hashtag Hidden Heroes. And now, Executive Director Amanda Brown-Stevens has a very special welcome message to share with you today. Amanda?
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to welcome you to our 2022 Hidden Heroes of the Greenbelt event. Thank you for joining us during what I expect for many of you is your lunch break. We appreciate this time to share some special stories and believe you'll be inspired and motivated to follow in the footsteps of these truly inspiring climate champions. In recent years, bad news has often felt overwhelming, from a pandemic to the erosion of our rights and more, and this past year has been no different. In our fight for a clean, safe planet, we have had setbacks at the federal level and seen our goals undermined by the Supreme Court. At the same time, we've been encouraged and inspired as climate advocates continue to work at all levels to tackle the critical challenges we face. When it comes to our rapidly changing climate, action at all levels is needed. And even as we push for greater action at the federal and international levels, local communities can play a critical role by implementing policies that build resilience throughout our region and beyond. Greenbelt Alliance is championing these efforts. On that note, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the communities throughout the country going through extreme heat, flooding, wildfires, and other climate impacts. The loss of lives and homes are not something we can accept as the new normal, so our work must go on in urgency. It's because of the collaboration we've had with people like the heroes we're honoring now that Greenbelt Alliance has been able to achieve major milestones over the past 64 years. Our decades of expertise and our deep motivation to tackle the challenges like the ones I mentioned earlier have driven some really exciting work over the past year. Last December, we launched the Resilience Playbook, which has quickly become the go-to guide for accelerating equitable adaptation and climate change in the Bay Area. With city planners, decision makers, and advocates adopting the playbook's recommendations, we're excited to advance solutions that address overlapping environmental, economic, and social challenges. We're at a pivotal moment to tackle both the housing and climate crises together. Greenbelt Alliance is doing this by promoting specific, development projects, and neighborhood plans that align with climate-smart principles, while also making it easy for people like you to get involved and make your voices heard on the issues that you care about. Later today, you'll hear from two of my colleagues about the important work we're doing to build resilience to climate hazards. This work includes identifying specific places throughout the region that will provide a multitude of benefits to vulnerable communities, ecosystems, and species to protect vital infrastructure systems and preserve local economies. So be sure to stay tuned to find out more. By supporting our work at Greenbelt Alliance, you're making an impact by helping to ensure that the creative solutions we're crafting today protect the people and the places you love here in the Bay Area for years to come. Thank you for your generosity. Every single dollar donated today counts toward creating a climate-resilient future for all.
So, now the moment we've all been waiting for. It's time to introduce you to our Hidden Heroes. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Hidden Heroes of the Greenbelt Award is being given to 3 exceptional leaders whose work exemplifies the mission and vision of Greenbelt Alliance. Now, in just a few moments, we will dive into a conversation with these folks. But now, I'd like to introduce you to hero Dr. Hoi-Fei Mok. Fei is the Sustainability Manager at the City of San Leandro, leading the implementation of the Climate Action Plan and other sustainability programs. Now, with a strong background in environmental science, climate policy, art, and social justice, Fei aims to build out community-driven strategies for local resilience to climate change. Dr. Mok is being honored today with the Planning for Resilience Hidden Hero Award. Here's their story to see just how impactful Fei's work has been in the San Leandro community.
I grew up here in San Leandro. My mom worked as a school teacher. My dad worked for the one big tech company in town. So my brother and I were very hyper-local to San Leandro. I went to college in Wellesley. I did summers abroad in Beijing, in Costa Rica, India, Tibet, and then ended up in Australia for graduate school, looking at environmental science work. I'm the type of person that wants to give back to the community, give back to the world. So there was always that kind of motivation. It took over 120 applications. A lot of interviews, but I landed in the Civic Spark AmeriCorps program. I ended up with the City of Emeryville to help them create their climate action plan. In 2019, my predecessor here in San Leandro retired and really actively recruited me, and then I've been working at the city since then. As the sustainability manager of the city, my role is to implement the climate action plan. This is a document that has been developed in collaboration with community, with different partners, agencies, and then approved by the council to really help direct us to meet our climate goals, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, looking at adaptation, building electrification or green transportation. Resilience at the local level is extremely, extremely important. Even though climate change is a global phenomenon, it will impact local communities in different ways. And so we want to be really specific about how it's showing up in a particular community, and then from there to be able to come up with the hyper-local response to meet the needs of the community. Here in San Leandro, we're looking at extreme heat, we're looking at wildfire smoke. Eventually, we'll be looking at sea level rise. In the process of developing the climate action plan, I think the key is really to get as much community input as possible. I did the 120 community meetings. That then helps us to make sure as many voices are heard in the process. When we're thinking about the type of actions that we want to take, we're leveraging a lot of really, really rich data on where low income or environmentally polluted areas are, where are there no trees, where the sea level rise might be. And all of that then informs us to say, okay, where are people going to be hit first and worst and hardest? We got a $1.5 million grant to plant trees in San Leandro.
So today is the very first tree planting for a partnership that Common Vision has with the city of San Leandro to plant 5,000 trees across the next 2 to 3 years. To get people participating in the planting of those trees, in the maintenance of those trees, in modeling that behavior for young kids and getting them to do it. That's my favorite picture of resilience. We all need each other. And so if we're working in the soil, we're planting trees, we're also hand to hand, and we get acquainted, and we get familiar, and we learn that we're not all so different from one another. And it's those kinds of understandings between people that will build resilient community.
Let's start. Ready? 1, 2. But get this standing up more straight.
One of the other projects I lead is the Resilience Hubs. We're looking to partner with organizations in the community and have them serve as hubs where they already have established relationships and trust among the community.
This, I mean, obviously it's dead now, but there's potential for like the 100,000 tree initiative to have this built into a garden, do some sheet mulching, maybe having some like worm bins or like compost area.
For the past year, we've been working with Faye and the city to transition our entire organization into more of a resilience hub, putting on the lens of resilience and seeing all of the services we offer through that lens. Our members are from multiple generations of families. So we have elderly folks who, in the event of a wildfire or an earthquake or an emergency, they might lose their power. They might not have the ability to plug in their medical devices. We're essentially forming a network that we can use to leverage resources in the event of an emergency.
My connections among the community and also with different community partners is probably the greatest asset that I bring.
What I love most about Faye is that they are very, very intentional about all they do, particularly relative to climate, environmental work, and justice.
What drives Faye is a lot to do with equity, making sure that everyone is brought along in this sustainability journey.
The through line for my work as an artist, a community organizer, sustainability manager, policymaker is, for me, the 3 pillars that I kind of orient my life around: community, connection, and creativity. I see a world where we all have access to clean water and air and food, to housing that is affordable in a community that is walkable and bikeable. We don't have to live 50 miles or more from where we're working, that we have a really strong local economy where we're building what we need, that we have a really vibrant community where people know each other and can take care of each other. That is the vision that I work towards, where we can really center joy and well-being, and I hope that comes to fruition.
Truly inspiring work, Faye. Now, the city and community of San Leandro are so fortunate to have you. And I'm especially moved how you managed to, create such close connections with the community and also inspired them to act. So I'd love to dig a little bit deeper on how you've achieved this, okay? We've just heard about the climate resilience strategies that you're working on in San Leandro and the resilience hubs, the tree planting project. You highlighted how collaboration is so key to what you do. What is your approach to building trust and collaboration with the community members, and why does that matter so much?
Yeah, collaboration and trust is essential to my work. I would say I have hometown advantage. Obviously, I grew up there. I have a lot of those personal relationships I'm building on. But it's also just a lot of listening to people. I spent the first 6 to 9 months of my job just setting up those one-on-one meetings with people, like really getting to know like what their needs are. Like part of this work is really just trying to develop projects and partnerships around where people are at. And by understanding where their capacities and needs are, then you can really start to establish, okay, like where can we go? Like how can we really find the commonalities between our goals and get to where we are? And I would say that, it's really essential that local governments do that, because oftentimes, like, you're the only person working on this work. And so it's really important to be able to have the strong partnerships and collaboration to be able to do it together.
I think there's definitely an advantage of, being from the community, from the area. You know it. It's very close to home to you. Mm-hmm. And you're making an impact, and it really resonates with the work that you do. That's fantastic. Talk about the lessons, perhaps, that, your city at San Leandro can teach other communities in the Bay Area, that want to ramp up their efforts, perhaps, to build this resilience. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. I would say that this type of collaboration, community-driven planning, is really essential for folks who want to be doing more equitable resilience work. You can't separate resilience from equity, and so you have to be starting with really the processes that are fair and inclusive, and starting with listening with folks, and starting with building those collaborations and partnerships, and then from there to be able to then to identify, okay, like where are the pressure points of folks, and where can we act both in setting up ourselves to succeed in the long run. So like planting trees, obviously that takes decades. You want to start that early, and also meeting people where they have the most urgent needs. So things that are coming up for people might be air pollution and so on. So that's something that we can do now, gain their trust, and then also to be able to set ourselves up to work in the long run.
That's great advice. But you're also learning from other cities as well, and it's a community effort. I mean, we're all in this together, right? And so what are some cities that you maybe model after what you're doing right now? Are there any that call to mind?
Yeah. I work really closely with cities in Alameda County, Oakland, Hayward, Berkeley. We get together a monthly basis to talk about best practices we're doing, and just being able to share and build off each other so that we're not recreating the wheel.
Thank you so much, Faye, for the insight. And so Greenbelt Alliance's work and partnerships would not be possible without its community of supporters. Now we're gathered right here today to help Greenbelt Alliance continue their critical work across the Bay Area. This is their biggest fundraising event of the year, and proceeds from this virtual celebration will help them continue their awesome mission. So we're so excited here today, and I also want to quickly turn to Joshua Hurwitz, who's a member of the board of directors at Greenbelt Alliance, who's going to share with us his passion for serving as a volunteer and why he feels it's so important to support this organization.
Hello, I'm Joshua Hurwitz, treasurer of the board. Supporting the Greenbelt Alliance allows me to advance two things I care about: ensuring that the hiking, mountain biking, and camping I enjoy will be available for future generations, just as our predecessors did for us, and working on complicated issues like climate change and housing equity in a way that will produce meaningful outcomes to everyday lives here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We are gathered today to uncover the stories of three impressive people whose work, which might go unseen, is truly making an impact. When I think about the threat of climate change and the dangers it poses to those I love, to the people and places that make the Bay Area so special, I wonder about the most effective route to make a difference. This always leads me to act local. The work that Greenbelt Alliance is doing at the local level throughout the region needs support. You can support them by doing two things right now. First, donate. Every dollar furthers the work this team is doing to protect valuable open space lands and make sure our communities grow in the right way and in the right places for everyone. Second, and this doesn't cost anything, spread the word about these hidden heroes. The more supporters they have, the bigger impact you, as part of our community, will make. A link will be sent out after this event. Share it with your network. Sign up for emails to get the latest updates and forward them to your friends. Follow Greenbelt Alliance on social media and tag people who will support their mission. And if you have the means to pledge $1,000 or more today, you will receive a special gift from the Greenbelt for you and a friend. This program partners with local farms and ranches that make up an important part of the Bay Area. From wines to olive oil to cheese and honey, the list goes on. Each month, we will highlight one of these producers and send you a tasty surprise for your kitchen. Greenbelt Alliance is proud to partner with Hafner Vineyard, Pie Ranch, and Frog Hollow Farm for these gifts, supporting small family businesses. And while we're on the topic of funding, I want to give a shout out to the sponsors who made this event possible today. These are individuals and businesses who are so deeply committed, they have pledged their support to help us reach our goal of raising $270,000 by the end of this event. And a special thank you to our lead sponsors, Brookfield Properties, Carmel Partners, East Bay Regional Park District, Meta, SOM, and Sonoma Land Trust, whose substantial gifts will have a lasting impact on Greenbelt Alliance's mission. With your additional support, we will reach our goal. So please, take some time now to donate whatever you can.
Well, now it's time to hear from Erin Morris, the Abundant Climate Smart Housing Hidden Hero. Now, in just under a year as the Community Development Director at the City of Vacaville, Erin has already made strides in diversifying the types of housing in the city. Now, among the many housing-related projects she's been responsible for, Erin has been essential to the Green Tree Specific Plan. Through complex coordination and effective collaboration, Erin has creatively and thoughtfully organized limited city staff resources to ideate this project and bring more economic opportunities to the city of Vacaville. Erin believes in the transformation potential that diversity can have on a community and works every day to amplify housing opportunities wherever she is. Let's listen to Erin Morris's story right now.
I grew up just north of Santa Rosa with a mom, a dad, and a little brother. My dad worked at the post office, my mom as a bank teller. I knew nothing about planning as a career. I was a teenager trying to start a punk rock club in Santa Rosa. And I actually sat across the table from a planner, and he told me everything about the fire department permitting, the police department permitting, the sound permit, the conditional use permit. And I remember as he was walking me through this incredibly onerous set of steps, I thought, well, I can do all this. This is great. This is easy. So that's how I first learned about planning, was sitting at that table. It just clicked. I like the idea that cities and the people that live in them can collectively agree to rules that help make the community better. I truly believe everybody should have a place to live. It should be safe, and it should be sanitary, and it should be a place that is ultimately supportive of a high quality of life. I've always had the ability to relate to people, and I really credit my grandma and my dad for that. Honestly, they could talk to anybody, and they did. Whenever I'm thinking about how cities talk to the members of the community, I always think about, if my dad or my grandma received this notice from the city, would they understand what the city was talking about? I really like people. I like hearing their stories, and they really often influence how I approach my work. San Jose just formed me as a planner. After San Jose, my family and I moved to Santa Rosa. I worked on a lot of affordable housing projects. I worked on some really great public policy projects like the Southeast Greenway and the Citywide Creek Master Plan and a grocery store initiative. I moved to the city of Napa in 2017. I was a planning director there for 4 years, overseeing both planning and code enforcement. My biggest accomplishment was working to revive the Napa Pipe Project. It's 150 acres. It goes all the way out to the Napa River. I worked through a very complicated negotiation with both the county of Napa and the developer, really culminating in an approved plan that should bring about 950 housing units, public parks, and a trail that actually connects with the existing Vine Trail and the Bay Trail. What initially drew me to Vacaville is I see there's just so much opportunity here. This is a great community, and yet I see how we can make it even better. 80% of our Vacaville residents actually leave Vacaville every day to go to work, and 80% of our workforce here in Vacaville comes from outside Vacaville. When you look at how our climate is changing and the kind of events that can happen, having housing near jobs and reducing people's commute patterns and reducing greenhouse gas emissions is positive for the climate, and it's positive for greenhouse gas reductions, but it's actually positive for people's lives. If you're not commuting, you're not generating greenhouse gas emissions, and you probably have time to pursue healthy activities and go to your children's school performance and maybe even walk your kids to school. That is why infill housing development projects and infill industrial development projects are so important.
The problem we're trying to solve here in the city of Vacaville is a long-term strategy that helps us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and incorporate more policies in general into our community development activities. Our community is like in the throes of a renaissance, so it's great to have another team player on board that's excited about the work and that's skilled enough to be able to really do a good job.
Here in Vacaville, downtown presents a tremendous opportunity to put more people in denser housing in an environment where they can access shops and restaurants and transit. I feel like my mission is to help this city diversify its housing for the betterment of both existing workers that come here from out of the area, but also businesses that are looking for people to work at these great jobs. The Green Tree Project is a classic infill mixed-use development on about 185 acres in northeast Vacaville. Green Tree is very close to our biotech hub down that way, and that's really the beauty of this project is it will put people in housing very close to their jobs in Vacaville. In Vacaville, a lot of the past development and current development is on former agricultural lands at the edge of the city or even within the city. But this is a case where this project is on a site that was previously used as a golf course. It's surrounded by existing development on all sides. And it feels like it's an amazing opportunity to achieve a lot of valuable workforce housing that really will help Vacaville achieve its economic and community goals.
Oftentimes, very specifically in government, we can create a lot of policies and a lot of plans, and they don't go anywhere. And you need someone that can drive it past the development phase into the implementation phase. And Ms. Morris is solidly an impact player when it comes to that.
A lot of planners can be gatekeepers, where almost like, give me a reason to say yes. And Erin was more, let me help you figure out how to get this project to be a yes. I think that what drives Erin is to make a difference. I think what she brings to Vacaville is the ability to listen to people.
After, for me, 22 years, I still find this work to be so exciting and so positive, and yet it is also some of the hardest work. It requires a level of persistence and optimism that we can't find every day. Planning makes a difference. The built environment is important to people. Our work matters, even if it's not particularly glamorous. Some people are more vocal, but everybody counts.
Now, Erin, you're really leading the way to bringing more homes to Vacaville, and you've really certainly done so in other communities that you've worked for in over your 20-plus year career. Now, with housing shortage and desperate need for solutions, your dedication, creativity, and of course, inclusive approach can really serve as a model for other planners and decision makers to follow. And this is amazing, but can you explain more about how communities can benefit from diverse types of housing? What are the biggest challenges like the Bay Area faces right now in terms of housing, in your opinion? What do you think?
One of the greatest challenges we face in the Bay Area, and particularly in Vacaville, is acceptance of different kinds of housing outside of the typical single-family detached home. And what I've found in my practice, both in Vacaville and in previous communities, is it helps for people to think about how everybody has to live somewhere. And the everybody's inclusive of ourselves, our family members, people that we see in grocery stores, people that do all the work in our community. And so I felt that bringing that perspective into my work has been very helpful.
So what are important planning processes happening right now? Can you tell us a little bit more about maybe the housing element updates and how are you following those processes?
All around the Bay Area, jurisdictions are doing their housing element updates, and Vacaville is doing ours in collaboration with the other cities in Solano County. I have found the collaborative approach has been great for really tackling what is a regional issue at both the city and our regional level. But we really are in the heart of the work of figuring out where this housing is going to go in our community, what type of housing we need, how much of it needs to be produced over the next decade, and really getting the community involved and helping us get the plan right.
Yeah, and that's so key. Housing is always going to be something that we're going to bring up. It's so important to our development here in the Bay Area, but really appreciate and we can learn from the great work that you are doing and that you're continuing to do. So thank you. Now, before we move on to hear from our final hidden hero, let's reflect on just how critical the work is that the entire Greenbelt Alliance team is doing each day. Now, when I think about climate and housing crises our region is facing, it's Greenbelt Alliance who has really connected the dots for me on how these two devastating crises are related and how they must be tackled together. Now, here's how I see it. The soaring housing costs of recent years have led to a catastrophic increase in housing insecurity and homelessness. This ultimately exposes vulnerable populations to harsh climate impacts like wildfires, floods, heat waves, drought, and the list goes on. Now, the reality is we can't stop building. There are too many people who need a safe place to live, but where we build matters. That's why Greenbelt Alliance is doing things like advocating for climate smart, which means sustainable, mixed, affordable, resilient, transit-oriented homes within existing cities and towns. Now, building homes in this way will house people across the income spectrum in urban areas close to work, transit, and services. And by encouraging equitable growth within cities, we're also protecting the open spaces that offer invaluable nature-based solutions to climate change, including carbon capturing trees and lands, wildfire buffer areas, and groundwater supply. So now, if you haven't already done so, I really want to encourage you to take a moment and donate to support this great work that Greenbelt Alliance is doing to create a Bay Area where everyone can live with nature in new and powerful ways. Now, you can do so securely online at give.greenbelt.org/donate, which you can see right here in the chat. Now it's time to hear from the nature-based climate adaptation hidden hero, Christine Reed. Christine is the battalion chief and fire marshal for the Central County Fire Department, serving the cities of Burlingame and Millbrae and the town of Hillsborough. Now, with wildfires worsening across the state, Christine saw that places like Hillsborough, where 70% of homes were at significant fire risk due to their proximity to wildland vegetation, needed support to build resilience and to keep people safe. So she created the Community Wildland Urban Interface Protection Program, which includes educational materials, public information, comprehensive inspections, and an ongoing collaborative partnership with local organizations and the town to support the community's goal for a fire-safe Hillsborough. Now, despite the challenges of the pandemic, Christine and her team successfully implemented this program, leading to successful inspections of more than 2,000 properties in 2021. So let's watch Christine's story right now.
I was born and raised in San Mateo County. I've lived here my entire life. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was younger, but I knew that I wanted to help people. There was the high school career day, and emergency responders were giving presentations. And I felt the fire service was the ultimate way that one could help someone. In college, there was a course in fire prevention, utilizing what we've learned by others who have experienced fire to help people increase their fire-safe awareness. That really interested me. Fire can happen to anyone. It doesn't care who you are or where you live. It will take any opportunity that we give it. We need to reduce those opportunities. In order to understand how to prevent fires, you need to understand how fires start. Reviewing the evidence that's on scene and looking at the burn patterns and speaking to witnesses and then developing an opinion about how and where a fire started. Across the state, across the country, we're having an increased need for housing. And we're building in areas that haven't been built on before. You have increased fire risks, whether that's based on a drought condition, or whether that's based on density. Sadly, we experienced the news and saw fires that were happening around us in the state. It highlighted that we don't want the same devastation to happen in Hillsborough. There's challenges across this state that we have no control over. There are some things that we do have various levels of control over. Climate change is happening. We need to adapt. There's a lot of dynamics that happen when you have almost 3/4 of your town included in a wildland urban interface area. And there are many communities in the Bay Area that have this same kind of condition.
Many homes in Hillsborough have acres, and the defensible space can be quite large. There's a lot of steep hills in Hillsborough, and they come in conjunction often with Hillsborough's open space.
Part of prevention is changing someone's behavior. It isn't always about enforcement. It isn't always about telling someone what they need to do. It is, how can someone be part of the solution?
If there was a fire that were to happen low to the ground, then we want to break that ladder. So we want to have clearance in between the lower vegetation to the taller vegetation. And that's exactly what you've done here. You've broken the ladder fuel, right? So you don't have a lot of vegetation that is low to the ground. You're retaining the hillside, but you've limbed up. Yeah. So if a fire does happen closer to the ground, then it's not going to catch the trees.
We prepared written materials that we sent out to every property. We held community meetings. The town of Hillsborough has the Hillsborough Neighborhood Network, a resident-based organization that works towards disaster preparedness and resiliency. We started our first year in 2021, and we already see changes in the mindset and the actions of our residents, reducing wildfire risk on their property and in their neighborhoods.
We're in the second year of our WE inspection program, and we're building upon the lessons that we learned from the first year as far as what additional information the residents needed in order to be successful. The town was really interested in collaborating with us to get this going, to make it safe for all the citizens here. A lot of the private residences have gotten cleaned up, brush has been trimmed back, trees have been limbed up, people are engaged.
So we're standing in one of the town of Hillsborough's open space preserves. When this was left untreated years ago, there was a lot of highly flammable brush that was solid across the area. So what the treatment has done is they have removed some of that flammable vegetation, created more natural breaks to reduce the density of the vegetation.
The successes that we have already seen with the Hillsborough Wildland Urban Interface Inspection Program is an example of residents taking the education that we've given them and being committed to doing their part. Residents, the town of Hillsborough, Central County Fire Department, we're all neighbors, and this is about neighbors helping neighbors. We can maintain the beauty that we have in Hillsborough while still reducing the wildfire risk.
What drives a lot of us in this prevention is to keep our communities safe and to do whatever we can to meet that objective. And I absolutely see that in Christine.
Christine is a great arm of bringing everyone together. Got lots of good ideas.
Since the first day of my career, my goal has always been to leave somewhere safer than it was when I got there.
Christine, the work that you do in the fire department is so critical and important to the safety of the entire communities that you serve. But I want to thank you first off for your service. We learned from your story just now, it was really impressive. Thanks to your passion for keeping our communities safe. You've led some pretty impactful initiatives over your career. And most importantly, the Wildland Urban Interface Protection Program. You talked a lot about establishing trust and also community buy-in to create a successful fire risk reduction program. What advice would you give others trying to start a similar program such as that when it comes to building community engagement and just overall commitment?
Well, first you need a community assessment. So we need to understand where our risks are. So when you have that, then you can develop your program. Part of that program, the main component of that program, is educating the communities. Having community engagement and community awareness is key to a successful program. So in the case of my program, we went out to the communities. We spoke to the residents and explained to them the risks that they were facing within their own neighborhoods. And that helped to get buy-in and an understanding, which then compounded that when we went through the town of Hillsborough, and everyone had the same understanding. No one denied that there was a risk. It was how are we going to minimize that risk as best as possible. So having that community risk assessment, developing your program, and then meeting with the communities and having that buy-in very early on and having the community understand, because we're all partners in the program, that is going to be key for a successful program.
And that is key. I mean, it's literally almost door to door, just making sure everybody in your community knows What is at risk here? What do we need to do together? The education is super important to develop programs such as that. Well, the Wildland Urban Interface Protection Program really focuses on prevention, right? And can you explain more about the difference between prevention versus response?
Sure, you can think of prevention as being proactive. When we understand the risks, when we learn about the risks and what we can do to minimize those risks, that is prevention, that is education, that is awareness. If something were to happen in the community, then we would have response. You would have the fire departments would respond, firefighters would then mitigate or put out the fire. But the goal of the program is if something were to happen in the community, we're minimizing that damage. We're minimizing the possibility for injuries. So the more that we can do on the prevention side is going to help us with mitigation. If we can reduce the risk, then we reduce the mitigation and reduce the response.
That's great. It really is about the prevention. Getting it early on. And yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Christine. Your insight is valuable and sharing with us. Thank you so much on how communities can build that resilience to wildfire. Very, very valuable. Thank you so much for sharing. Sharing these hidden hero stories and what they've identified as needed resources to help them in their critically important work, I am encouraged by this next part of the show. Greenbelt Alliance just so happens to be in the process of developing a powerful new tool that could just be what people like our heroes need to guide equitable resilience planning and conservation initiatives. Here to tell us more are resilience managers Sadie Wilson and Blanca Escobedo.
Hey everyone, I'm Sadie. Over the past few years, we have been diving deep into the best available data that will allow us to identify resilience hotspots. These are lands in need of stewardship or protection that are also at risk of climate hazards and have the opportunity to benefit frontline communities. For the mapping and data analysis phase of our Hotspots project, we combined climate data, conservation priorities, and social vulnerability metrics to uncover places around the Bay Area that are critical to building resilience to wildfires, floods, and extreme heat. And we are doing this work in partnership with local leaders, the many hidden heroes around the region who are key to implementing the projects that are vital for protecting our natural assets and bolstering communities' resilience to climate change. An important consideration we had to account for when thinking about how to map and measure risk was how to capture not only the physical characteristics that put a place at risk, like unmanaged forest or homes in a flood zone, but also the social and economic characteristics that can make it harder for certain populations to respond and recover in the face of disaster. When talking about climate resilience, we call this social vulnerability. During our analysis, we realized that there was a gap in available data for understanding the needs of our communities during a wildfire. So we created the Wildfire Social Vulnerability Index as both an input to our own resilience hotspots analysis and as a shareable resource for our partners. To create this index, we relied heavily on existing research and data to develop indicators in 6 areas. We then evaluated our 15 indicators relative to the Bay Area, which means that our Wildfire Social Vulnerability Index is one of a kind in its ability to rank census tracts relative to our region alone. But this information is actually critical to identifying places that may not be showing up at the state or federal levels as disadvantaged communities, but are nonetheless experiencing conditions that make adapting and responding to climate change especially challenging. This index is just one piece of the full Resilience Hotspots project, which will launch in 2023 as a Bay Area-wide effort to better prepare communities for a more resilient future and position the region to contribute to California's 30 by 30 goals. But the data and mapping are only one side of the story. My colleague Blanca is here today to tell you more about how we've been working to support local stakeholders in co-creating resources for adapting to climate impacts through nature-based solutions.
Hi everyone, I'm Blanca. As Sadie mentioned, there are 2 key components to executing our one-of-a-kind Resilience Hotspots research: the spatial analysis and the community partnerships that are key to ground truthing the data and producing resources for action rooted in community priorities. The only way we can do this is by partnering with local leaders and providing the support necessary for taking abstract concepts of climate risks and turning them into tangible projects ready for implementation. The work that I'm doing in Sonoma County right now is a great example of this. Sonoma County, as many of you know and may have even experienced firsthand, is at high risk for wildfires. But it also has an incredible opportunity to leverage its various natural and working lands to create buffers to wildfires. These types of buffers, when properly managed, have the ability to provide nearby communities and the environment with multiple benefits. That is why, right now, we are working on convening cross-sector stakeholders, including the Latinx and farm worker communities in Sonoma County, on our Sonoma Wildfire Pilot Program. This program will translate fire science and community-identified priorities into policy recommendations. It will also be used to identify strategic locations for greenbelt buffers to protect vulnerable people and places from wildfire. To do this, we are seeking to create a community-led working group that will partner with technical experts to provide policy recommendations and also identify wildfire buffers. I am thrilled to see our work in action in Sonoma County, and as it's a pilot program, I'm also encouraged to see that it could be replicated in other communities, like those our Hidden Heroes work in. We can't wait to share this with all of you soon.
Now, between our hero stories and what we just heard from Sadie and Blanca about Greenbelt Alliance's Resilient Hotspots project, I'm feeling a little bit more confident than ever in our region's future. And now I'd like to open up our conversation to all of our hidden heroes here today to give each of you a chance to offer your perspective on a couple of questions here. As we just heard from Sadie and Blanca, one of the goals of the Resilient Hotspots tools is to help local governments. Governments like the agencies that you work for, getting funding and resources to implement resilience plans and policies as well, to ultimately protect the community from the impacts of climate change in an equitable way, of course. Now, what is a key resource or resources that you would say are currently missing or lacking that could really further your work? And how can you share with us, the work in accelerating adaptation in your community? What's lacking and missing right now? Erin, maybe start with you.
In Solano County, we need more champions of resilience initiatives and people to speak to the value of that to our elected officials and appointed officials, to just bring government resources and financial funding sources to bear on these challenges.
How about you, Christine?
Yeah, funding is a key component that helps to, especially in working in public service, funding is always an issue that we need to establish either grant funding or other kinds of resources so that we're not pulling it in other places. So that all helps with educating and communication and partnership. And, we don't always like to say that funding is an issue, but it's not something we don't have, but we can always capitalize on that a little bit more so that we can do more with more.
And the more funding, the more we can do. I mean, that's just ultimately what we need, and the awareness and everybody else pitching into it. How about you, Faye?
Yeah, certainly champions and funding resonates a lot with me and the city of San Leandro as well. And I'll just add to that staffing is also an important component, not just within like my office of sustainability, but also in other departments as well. In that, in a lot of my collaborations with the other departments, oftentimes, like if they're underwater and trying to just do what they're trying to do, I don't have my own capacity to be able to work on our projects. So it's important not just to have folks within my office and my department to be able to do my work, but also other folks who are sustainability or climate aware in the other departments as well, to be able to work together and do interdepartmental collaboration.
Yeah, we need champions, we need funding, and then that builds staff. It's all comes together, and we need a lot more of that, indeed. And so what's the connection between the work, the three of you are all doing? We've got housing to land use and also resilience planning. How do you see this work at the local level impacting, the entire region?
I think the connection that we all have is we're planning communities for the future. And what we're doing now, we may not see the full impact for years, many years. But what we're doing now is making a change to help that. And I find that we're interconnected with the type of housing we have, building more sustainable housing, And then within that, the areas around the housing, be able to protect them. So we all are interconnected, whether we think we are or the programs that we have. And that's pretty exciting that we're able to see it. And whether we realize it or not, we're bringing it in from a local single city development or program. We can widen that regionally.
Yeah, I mean, like oftentimes I'm learning from other cities, like what their best practices are and just how they manage to solve these problems. Like many of the times, a lot of the challenges that I'm facing in San Leandro are exact same ones that other cities in other counties or other regions are looking at. So really, it's just a matter of being able to learn from each other, like piggyback off of different templates or models, program models, or even being able to share the specific guidance on how to actually implement a program.
What we're doing locally does impact a bigger picture. Talk about it from our housing perspective, Erin. Is there anything you'd like to share there in your city of Vacaville and how you hope to maybe inspire other communities to live that way? And then also, what have you learned from others?
Vacaville produces a ton of housing that benefits the whole Bay Area. One of the challenges that come with that, though, is that 80% of our residents leave Vacaville to work every day, and we import 80% of our workers. So I feel like the housing that's produced in Vacaville in combination with jobs actually benefits people who can live where they work, and that takes pressure off of our roadways, reduces commuting, reduces greenhouse gas emissions. We all have to start somewhere, though, and I would say an incremental approach is ahead for us in Vacaville. But I was really inspired by thinking about that through the equity lens that, Faye, you bring to your work, and as it relates to really improving people's lives where they work by making sure that they can live in proximity to that.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing, all of you. I mean, we're really interconnected in many ways, and we're trying to plant that seed now and early so that it could be better in the future for many communities to come and generations to come at that. Well, one of Greenbelt Alliance's mantras is the biggest impact individuals can make on climate change is to act locally. And what would you recommend to other people to make a difference? What's some of the call to actions that we can, encourage others to do? Start with you, Christine.
Be involved. Understand what climate change is and how they can do their part in being aware and within their own homes. In the town of Hillsborough, we have our communities, but we're only one community. And we have neighboring communities with very similar risks. And bringing that to a regional perspective is being aware of who is around you and working together. This is a partnership that we need to understand what the goal is and how we each have our own perspective and our own participation with how we achieve that goal.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Erin?
I would just add that all local government, in my experience, is better when people are at the table, not just opposing this project or that project, but really championing for the kind of things that community should focus on to make it a better place to live and a better place to work and just a better place for humans. So I really, again, think that I agree with Christine that we need people to be involved and we need people to be passionately involved and engaged over a period of time more holistically.
We need more champions, indeed, and we need to take action. This is our future we're talking about here, and it really sets the trend. It's a ripple effect, really, what you do in your local community. It impacts others. How about you, Faye?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of build off of what was just said in that folks should also get to know their neighbors and community and be able to speak on behalf of others. Oftentimes, those who are most impacted by climate change aren't the ones with the resources or capacity to be able to voice them. So the more that we can get to know each other, get to know our neighbors, get to know what actually folks are facing, the better that we can all advocate for what our community as a whole can need. And then obviously, I wouldn't be the same of the person if I didn't mention that people can also be planting trees. Planting a seed. These are some things that we can do to actually benefit the whole community or generations to come.
I want to ask all three of you here, how do you work closely with your local agencies, your departments within your own cities to accomplish your goals, especially what you're trying to do for your local community? We'll start with you, Faye.
Yeah, I mean, internal collaboration is really, really key, just as important as external collaboration. So we have a green team where we meet on a regular basis with representatives from the other departments. So I'm able to check in with them kind of on like broader issues of climate change and equity, in addition to more project-specific meetings where I'm meeting with the folks who are involved in those kind of day-to-day. And so in that way, again, like, with the same approach, like making sure that I'm paying attention to like what their needs are, what their capacity is, looking at where the mutual goals are so that we can all be working together, leveraging all the different resources and skills that we have in order to move it forward.
Okay, thank you, Faye. So you have a green team that you work with very closely and meet regularly to talk about those things and work together. How about you, Christine? Is there a team that you work with?
Absolutely. So I have both internal and external teams. Internally, obviously, within the fire department, within the prevention division, we have staff that does the inspection component of the program. But we work very closely with the town's planning department when we're looking at housing. We work with the building department with regulations in the high-risk area of ignition-resistant construction requirements. And then we work with the city manager's office when we're looking to get out community messages and the town-wide educational newsletter formats that we're able to get more educational information out to the broader communities. I will say that we have one external group when it's actually a resident group. Hillsborough Firewise is a resident group. The town of Hillsborough, our wildland urban interface area, is a certified Firewise USA community, which is a certification that we're really proud of, but that comes with work. And so we have a great group of residents that are very engaged, that are very responsible to wanting to reduce the wildland risk. And so we work with Hillsborough Firewise as well to spread out that word. And they do a lot of great work with contacting those in their communities and arranging for chipping programs that are at no cost to the residents. And so where it's not just a fire department program, it is very collaborative, both within the city departments and outside within the community.
Great. It's great to have those champions that really do care and that are taking a hands-on approach. They want to be involved. That's fantastic. How about you, Erin?
You know, throughout my career, collaborating with other staff has been the most fun, but also the most important part of the work I do. And I would say Vacaville, like other communities I've served, is comprised of really dedicated public servants. And we have a lot to do. It's not just housing, and it's not just this thing or the other thing. I mean, cities provide such a full suite of services. But I've just found that working collaboratively, particularly since our city council has set housing as one of the top priorities of the city, and in particular, housing near jobs and more jobs even near housing. And so it's been helpful when in my work with other department heads or even with other staff, I can call us all to the common purpose that is what our city council wants to do, which is to create more housing and more kinds of housing to serve the community.
Thank you so much for sharing. This conversation has been so enriching, so inspiring, and thank you for being heroes in your local communities. And we hope that it really does create that ripple effect. It takes just one seed to be planted or tree to be planted, and it'll make it more beautiful for many more generations to come. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You truly are heroes. Before we end this inspiring event, Greenbelt Alliance Executive Director Amanda Brown-Stevens has a couple of thoughts she'd like to leave you with today. Amanda?
Thank you, Franco, and thank you for being our host today. Your energy has been infectious. I'd also like to thank our hidden heroes, Faye, Erin, and Christine. It has been an absolute pleasure getting to learn about you and the important and now very much seen work you're doing to champion climate-smart efforts in your communities. And to those of you tuning in today, we are so grateful for your continued support. In a world where much of what we watch and read is stressful and honestly quite frightening, taking a moment like today to uplift the stories of 3 individuals who are doing good in their communities is so very much needed. And while these heroes are certainly doing amazing things to build equitable climate resilience, the fact that you, our supporters, are here now celebrating these folks and Greenbelt Alliance's work makes you a part of our story, one that inspires, one that brings hope, one that connects us to something bigger and better. Now, I ask you to leave today feeling a renewed sense of motivation to join Greenbelt Alliance and our heroes by getting out in nature to explore this beautiful place we are so lucky to call home, by getting involved in your hometown's planning and policy processes. I know that one can sound daunting, but Greenbelt Alliance offers tools and training that will make your involvement effective and enjoyable. And it can't go without saying one more time. You can join Greenbelt Alliance in our work by donating today. As a small nonprofit doing really big things, your donations are critical to our success. So please give today, and together we can deliver solutions that create an equitable, climate-smart Bay Area for those living here now and well into the future.
Thank you so much, Amanda. With that, we will sign off and hope you leave feeling that sense of motivation Amanda so eloquently outlined. Now, if you'd like to share any thoughts or have questions for the Greenbelt Alliance team, you can email info@greenbelt.org. Now, thank you so much for supporting the critical work this amazing organization is doing, and thank you for joining us here today. Have a great rest of the day.